This is the Team Objection Podcast for May 24th, 2022, episode 529.
Review extravaganza.
It is, and things may seem a little bit strange, and that's okay. We're not live this week because we're out of town. We're not here, but we're here, but we're not here. Hell, I might even try and watch the premiere live when it goes up so I can still talk to people, but that'll be future me, not present day me.
Interesting. I like the way you put that.
We have a mega vacation coming up. We're going to be out of town for like 12 days, and I know that's just inviting people to come rob our house, but you don't know where we live, so screw it. And if you do know where we live, you're our friend, and I would hope you wouldn't rob us.
And Michaela will be here, but so all you have to do is overpower her.
That's right. You can just throw her out the second floor window. And But for the audio listeners, yes, Michaela is here. Dave is not because he doesn't watch these two shows because he's an ingrate.
Yeah, we have actually somebody who can reason and elucidate their points. So we always appreciate competency on the show. That's why we like having Michaela instead of Dave.
High praise. Thank you.
You may be able to piece out when this episode happened in the timeline based on the shirt I'm wearing and Sean's overall opinion of Dave. So the real long-time show followers may be able to kind of puzzle this one out.
It's lingered from a little bit of residual hatred.
That's right. This was an episode we had talked about doing back in April, and then there was a fire in Flagstaff, and my week went out the window. So we didn't have a chance to do it then. We're doing it now because it seemed better than just missing a week. We figured, what the hell? So no more talk about what's going on. Let's just pretend like it's a regular episode, because it is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And first up, I just decided on this order for reasons I don't remember when I built these slides weeks ago. But we're going to talk about Haikyuu Season 4. We had two different Season 4s. Just happened to work out that way. It wasn't planned. And first, we're going to talk about Haikyuu. You know, if you've listened to the show before, it's a show that's near and dear to our hearts. Season 4 was a tumultuous trip, trying just to make it to the States. It came out in Japan, during the pandemic and was sort of split in half because of it. But it was still a longer than expected time before we got it. We finally did, and we watched it. Now you guys have to tell me what you think.
Great. Well, yeah, and I like starting with this one actually because it is more fresh.
I was gonna say
So,
I don't even remember Cobra Kai.
Putting
anymore.
Cobra Kai first isn't going to change the fact that it was a while ago. So
Yeah.
Haikyuu Season 4. Gosh, I will start with the things that I didn't like. Actually, that's what I'm gonna do. It was interesting. So they changed studios, right? So some of the art direction was different, and I think it was a style at some point where things looked really angular in certain shots. And I think that was intentional. Like when tension was high, it seemed like all the characters were very angular looking, sharp chins, sharp noses, sharp features, little things like that I didn't hate. One Punch Man went to a different studio. The drop in quality was really unfortunate. This one, I didn't really feel that. A couple characters looked a little different, some more than others. Some of the translation I felt like was a little weird at times, maybe not quite as good as it has been in the past. And there was a lot more fan service this season, which I don't really care that much about. It's kind of like a thing in anime where you don't love it, but you acknowledge that it's there. But when you've had 3 seasons of little to none, and then all of a sudden you get more than you've ever had in one episode, and then multiple of those episodes, it stands out to you. So it was weird. It felt different. Did you pick up on that, Kayla?
Yeah, I did. There were definitely some, anime always leans into, its metaphors and its writing with the dialogue, which is fine. But I really noticed it here where I'm like, this translation is weird. This is a very weird way to go about talking about this. There was this whole conversation about sushi, and the whole point was the team is hungry for victory. And I'm like, this is stupid. Why are we talking about it like this?
Yeah, well, and then it goes into one of the parts that I liked the least, and it was there's a character. I'm skipping around. Sorry. There's a player on what is even the team that they play, the big team, the one that really mattered at the end.
Oh, the one that was the whole second
season,
half of the season. That's God.
The team of the twins is what
and
I know.
And Arizaki.
Yeah, and they went into the twins' backstory, which the show does, and I thought that was pretty interesting. And then they went into the backstory of some bench warmer on the team that comes out. He's so tactical, and this kid, I didn't really care about his backstory. He was barely on the court, and he just talks. He just rambles, and I'm like, what are you saying, dude? Get to your point, and then shut up. we're spending too much time with you, and the time that we are spending is just kind of like long-winded and like I don't care. Get to the get back to the twins. They're interesting.
Yeah, I really felt like the superfluous dialogue at times.
Yeah.
It was just like, wow, what are we've been talking for like 5 minutes. There's no volleyball action. What's going on? Yeah, it was strange. Yeah, and also about the art style. I didn't mind it at first, but then I made the mistake of going back and rewatching some stuff from season 1 and 2, and I was like, oh, I noticed it more now. I don't hate it. I thought it still looked good when it mattered, like with the action for the most part. But yeah, like even just like the way the characters look now is,
I think
it's interesting. It's closer to the manga, which is fine. But I don't know why we changed it now, like in season 4 after we had 3 really great seasons. Like why now? I don't get the decision to change it when they did. It's interesting, I guess.
And if you're wondering why the controversial word is up there in the header, if you're watching the video version of this, that's why. Because for better or worse, the change was noticeable. In some ways, it was better. I think the action sequences actually benefited from the new style of animation, like you said, especially in the pivotal points. Where, yeah, the first 3 seasons also ramped up quite a bit on these like deciding match points, but here they had some really interesting shots, some new fluidity. They weren't going back to the same knee drive dig every single time. Like, I think they could flex in those spots. They even had some of like the just close up like standstill character moments where again you could tell like this is important and they've really gone all out on this specific drawing. And then there are times where it has like a Dragon Ball Super feel where these characters don't look like themselves at all. And I think you can make a case for a couple of them. Asahi is one of the worst looking characters
oh my God,
in the entire show.
So bad.
Suga, they did a little bit dirty too.
Yeah, in fact, it's kind of the core 3 seniors because Daichi, I think, is the other one who also does not look like himself at times.
Mm-hmm.
There are times where like Kageyama might look a little bit different, but you're still never like, who is that? It's Kageyama, and it's just like, they cut a couple corners on this particular shot. It wasn't all that important. The core 3 seniors all feel like they were drawn by somebody who didn't know who they were for half the season.
So with Asahi, you don't quote me on this. It felt like his hair, he had a straight hairline. And then now he has like a poof. It's rounded. And I know that sounds small, but it was so distracting to me the whole time. It's like, why? He looks like kind of dopey now. He was supposed to kind of look a little bit older, sort of intimidating, which contradicts his character a little bit because he's kind of a big softie.
Yeah.
Now he just looks like a big softie, and so sometimes the visual stuff can inform the character stuff. And so I feel like that was a really unfortunate change.
So I also have one big frustration since we're doing negatives first, and it's the whole first 10 episodes of the season.
Okay, what was your beef?
I think that is the worst training sequence the show has had thus far, and it's not close. It spends way too much time on Hinata and a little bit of Kageyama, and the rest of the team gets fucked. And I found that to be extremely displeasing because I'm happy for Hinata and he needed to have this evolution. So like what he experiences is good. And we'll get to the good stuff here in the second half because we all do like the show. I was sitting here watching so we had this moment eventually. Just pick one example. Noya at one point is struggling. He can't seem to set the ball or to bump the ball properly. He's trying to receive jump floats and he can't do it with overhands, trying to set it. And the payoff for that, I think I'm supposed to have this like emotional resonance with it because the unnamed bench player, whose name I still can't tell you, finally at least has some involvement. He's working with Noya. He's trying to inspire his confidence. And it's like multiple times they flash back to the scene back in the first 10 episodes where he's kind of helping him through it then. He's actually hitting jump serves to him and kind of helping Noya like work through it and asking him why he's doing it. That's the only scene. They flash back to that scene, but it's the only one. There is no other development between the two of them at any point in this season or a previous season, because there are some things that pay off from earlier seasons in this season. That's not one of them. So, like, yes, we spent a lot of time on Hinata, and he improved, and that's awesome. His stuff is great, and to see his development, he was almost maybe too quiet in earlier seasons, so that's good. Kageyama, pretty solid. Everybody else, like, what did... we have a few moments for each person, I suppose, although Daichi is kind of non-existent in this season, if I'm being honest. But I just felt like we built this ensemble cast and then just suddenly shifted to our deuteragonists for almost the entire season.
Yeah, Tanaka got a little bit sort of from the girlfriend, but in some ways that one didn't go really anywhere. So I was like, I found myself wondering, I would be interested to see what the manga did and how much time they spent and who they visited during this sequence. but it would have been cool to have more time spent on the team and a little bit less on this sort of weird romancing with Tanaka that was just kind of a little bit it's sort of cute, and you are interested in like what are their love lives like. The show hasn't really gone into there. It's a part of high school. They probably should cover that, but it just like didn't really felt like it went anywhere.
Would you like to know a spoiler?
Sure.
Sure.
In the manga, I found this accidentally because I
Okay.
was looking for images at one point and I saw a still from it and I was like, oh, he marries Shimizu,
Was that the girl?
the
tall
female
girl?
trainer. No, that's
Oh.
the one that ignores him
Oh.
the whole series.
Oh, the manager?
Yeah.
Kyoko?
Kyoko.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
They get married. He ends up like running an athletic store and I forget what she ends up doing and they're married. So for me, having had that spoiled, I'm watching this like, I know this isn't going to pay off. So what are we doing spending all this time on it?
Is the manga over?
It's in a different spot, and they did like a weird flash forward that I tried not to read too much
flash
into.
forward, okay.
Because I don't want to know, like,
Oh.
I don't know if that's going to spoil what happens in the rest of this tournament, for example. So I've tried to avoid too many details on it. But I know they flash forward, and I know a couple other spoilers as well that I don't want to give away because they're more important.
Yeah, look, like if this girl is part of that journey, like Cho Chang was for Harry Potter, right? But all I will say is it didn't get there in this season, and so it felt really superfluous.
Well, I think I'm connecting all of this by bringing this up because this felt stretched.
Yeah. Yes, it did.
It felt like we needed to hit an episode quota, and COVID messed everything up. Because I really liked the Inarizaki match. I think it's the highlight of the season, as most of like the big matchups are for this show. But I was stunned that it took up like basically 12 episodes.
Yeah.
There's an interruption kind of in the middle for a side plot, but for the most part, it's basically like episode 13 on. And after I thought about it more later, I realized it's because everything was stretched. There's just not that much happening in this season when you really boil it all down.
I wonder if that's why you get the fan service too, is because they're like, well, they're in a hotel. What's up? There's a bathhouse. Let's get some bath scenes in there.
I hated
Whereas
it.
maybe there wasn't enough time before for them to be horny. I don't know, but I thought that was interesting. My issue with the training, Chris, you bring up a great point. I'll agree with you. I'll also say you've separated Hinata and Kageyama, and if you ever wondered how much their dynamic is crucial to the success of that show, that really showed you. I miss them being together so much. And it does so much more for Kageyama than it does for Hinata, actually. Hinata, I thought his stuff was interesting, and they worked on something that was a big weakness that I'm so glad he worked on. Kageyama, he's a little more bland when he doesn't have Hinata, and their whole dynamic of like these two only have one thing in common. And the one thing they have in common is really, really important and cool, but like that's it. They're so different. It's so wonderful, such a wonderful part of the show. He didn't like work on as much. He has that Serene King moment, but I would be hard pressed to say like I can tie this back to his training. He just sort of developed it. I know he talked about the goody two shoes thing. To me, that was like not a direct line. That was like a few on the whatever, connect the dots. That was a few degrees for me. It wasn't as strong. So then I was like, why almost separate them at all? And they did not give me a good answer.
I'm also a little bit frustrated with Hinata, even though I praised most of what happens in this season, but I don't really understand the hubris he has at the start of the season, especially coming off of the Shiratorizawa match where it's like it's clear that he's outmatched as an attacker at the net. Like we just watched a guy stunt all over them for 5 straight sets and almost beat them nearly single-handedly. Like, yes, the other players on Shiratorizawa matter, but Ushiwaka is the by far best player on that team. He's one of the best players in all of Japan. Hinata just got to watch that, seemingly be humbled by it even though they won. He starts off this season being stunned that he wasn't invited to what Kageyama's invited to. Forget the all-rookie one, which you can make a case for him for. The fact that, Noya is not invited to this camp, okay? And Noya is a much better player than Hinata is at the start of this season and even still at the end of it. So it was a little bit frustrating for him to pop up the way he did. I don't know if that was just the excuse to get him there to where he needed to be for the story, but I'm like, where is this coming from? Like, it's one thing for him to believe in himself a lot. He's always kind of done that, but that's almost to the point of ludicrousness Like, you think you're on Kageyama's... Like, we know you can't serve. You can't receive.
Yeah.
That's like half the fucking game. It's called serve-receive for a reason. You're a medium middle blocker at best, probably below average because of your height, and you can hit okay based on Kageyama's sets, and you think you deserve to be here? We went through this whole crisis of conscience back in Season 2, and you said at the time you needed to get better. You didn't want Kageyama to keep setting you the same way because you recognized that you had to improve. So I just didn't really understand where that whole thing came from.
Well, and whether or not he was just like, I want to be invited to that. And whether it was hubris or just like, he just loves volleyball. So he's like, I want an invite no matter what, even if I don't deserve it. I want to do this cool thing. Either way, I will say it was, definitely to position the character arc of like, he's forced to take a step back, and doing that, he gains some perspective on like himself. So like the metaphorical, but then also like literally on the game.
Yeah.
And that makes him much better. And Chris, you pointed out at one point in the final match, he's the best player on the floor. At one point. And I don't know how long it lasts for, but he's like critical. Both his hits, his blocks, his receives in the back. Like, he makes a huge difference. And so often in the show, what I actually like about it is he is exposed in some ways. He's a great hitter and he's a nice 1-2 punch with Kageyama, but like, he has so many weaknesses. And now they're starting to work on those. And the new rival that he has, I'm sure, is only going to push that further, which I liked. Birdman. Whatever his character's name is, I don't know.
It doesn't
the guy
matter.
looks like a bird.
He literally
We'll find out later.
They said his name. It means nothing to me right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're obviously planting seeds for the future, because especially now with this match over against the Twins and all of them, we know there's a Nekama matchup lingering, which is why people are so excited for Season 5, which, for people who don't know, still is not official yet. It seems like it's only a matter of time, but there's still no official announcement regarding an actual Season 5. I think that's also what's kind of weird, is that Haikyuu has generally succeeded at introducing teams and making them relevant quickly. We saw it with Shiro Torizawa, because outside of Ushiwaka, we knew nothing about that team before Season 3. But like, Tendo immediately pops out as a character like, oh, that's interesting. I like him. Let's learn more, right? Other than the Twins, to Sean's point earlier, I'm not sure they established that within Arizaki. And the other characters they introduced in the two camps between Kageyama's side and Hinata, they're not going to come up again. Hinata's were mostly old teammates or old allies and enemies he had seen before. And Kageyama's, there's a couple of them, like Birdman, floating around that are going to show up eventually, but they haven't yet. So that whole training sequence, to go back to the stretched out point, I mean, I know some of that will pay off in the future, but it was like, okay, we keep showing Nekama. They were almost non-existent this season. We saw one of their matches in one episode, but like, they're this long-term rival that's building. We just got cock-blocked from them for a whole season, though.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think that's the struggle I've been having with this season as well, is that it feels like, you know, eventually when we have the whole show and we can watch it, you know, all at once, this won't feel quite so jarring. But it felt like really weird to have this rival team that I don't really care about except for the Twins, and then these other players that are sort of on the periphery, but we don't see them again because this season we only have time for this one match against this one team. We'll get to the other teams eventually, I guess, but like, it's hard to care, I guess, about these new rivals.
Yeah, I just don't want to make the mistake that so much shonen anime does of eventually you expand the cast, and there's always a breaking point for me where it's good and it's good and it's good, and then it's like, it's too much. I don't care about all these new characters anymore. And when you're getting introduced like near the end of a whatever show, Naruto, and I'm like, I don't give a fuck, man. You're like, who? So a little bit to Haikyuu, I was like, all the characters that are being introduced during this training, I don't care about you. Am I about to play you? Then I don't give a shit.
Yeah, exactly.
So that
Who
was
cares
a little...
about Birdman? He's not even
Oh, I actually care about Birdman, but they clearly have plans for him, right?
Yes.
Yeah, him of anybody.
The guy with the two things on the thing, and he was in it a lot.
They got the mask, who didn't like talking to anybody and wanted to stay in the corner.
Yeah, the germaphobe.
Oh,
those are going to come back. So I know it's going to pay off eventually, but in a season that didn't really pay off other than its one main match, it almost felt like too much teasing.
Well, but then when you're spending that much time on that stuff, narratively, isn't that my issue? Is to create a satisfying story. Now they have to make it at least somewhat far into this tournament, because if they don't, which I would be okay with, if it serves the story, that's fine. But now we spent all this time foreshadowing things that, like, yeah, maybe in season 8 they're gonna make it back to the tournament, but like, So there's certain like spoilers and things that they do. Although I say that, and at the same time, I was on the edge of my seat for this one. I was like, are they really going to have them lose? They're spending a lot of time with this team. They seem really intimidating. I don't know. So that I guess I'm transitioning to the things that I liked, where when Haikyuu is rolling and they're doing what they do really well, it's always good. And I had the same feeling, like, again, the time on the twins I thought was interesting. I like them less than our other antagonists. I'm sorry, Michaela.
What?
My final issue. Why did we have the guy in the crowd be some... Who was that? And why? He was the guy like narrating. He was with the girl.
Oh, yeah. Who the hell was that?
He's from the OVA. He's with that antagonistic team that tried to cut corners against Nekama in the match that Nekama qualified with to get into this tournament.
Would that not have been...
That's also weird because if you don't watch the OVA, you have no idea who he is.
Would that not have been better, just no matter what, even if he was whoever he is, if that was Oikawa in the stands?
I was going to say, I wish it was Oikawa.
Isn't that just a missed opportunity to have a compelling character who isn't in the season at all?
He was in like 2 scenes. He is like looking at his phone. He's mad. And then he like runs away at one point. And that's literally all we see of Oikawa.
Right.
And I only say that because they've already had him in that role before. And it was great.
Yeah.
So why do this other guy when you could have like the star of the show?
Yeah. They also could easily have had that been Tendo and Ushiwaka.
Sure.
Yeah.
Would have been better.
Because like he's bitter about losing to them, but he's also intrigued by like the weird duo that he gets so antagonistic with. And Tendo can do the lion's share of the talking because that's how that relationship dynamic works. But they could have been in the stands as like a callback because like Oikawa doesn't have a tremendous reason to be there anymore. He came to watch the match in season 3 because he hated both teams so much, and now it's so I can understand not him specifically, but to your point, someone we have a connection with from the past would have been nice, whether it was him, Ushiwaka, Coach Ukai again, like somebody that we have a connection to, and not this guy who was in a side episode.
This random.
So sorry, I said I was going to positives, and then I went back to one more negative.
Yeah, you betrayed it.
But the positives are really positive.
Yes.
You know, the wall team, oh god, I know their name. Daytech. I could take it or leave it, but I thought they did pretty good with what was there. We know that they're formidable, and they kind of brought a new wrinkle into that match, so that was good.
Yeah.
But the match, kind of the warm up with that one team, I don't know who they are, but you were not really supposed to. We didn't spend much time on it.
Yeah.
The big match was as good as it needed to be, and there were so many punches and counter punches and strategy and tactics and characters having moments. Tanaka, even though the thing with the girl was weird, like he had a moment. And I thought it was so insightful because he's like, I'm kind of just average.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you are, but like, you know, but you don't have to be. And I thought he had a great moment.
He has a couple of good moments.
Most of the team has some good moments. I like the little rivalry now that's building between the two pinch setters.
Tadashi, and I don't know who the other guy is.
Yeah, I never remember his name. It doesn't matter.
Number 7.
Number 7.
So,
yeah, I thought that was fun. At first, I was worried. I was like, no, Tadashi, because he's like my spirit animal. So, you know, don't replace him. But then I thought, oh, this is good because it's actually pushing Tadashi as well. So, I liked that.
Yeah. What's his face?
Noya had a
Tsukishima.
moment.
Noya had some good moments. Like Noya doesn't get a lot of moments usually. It's just like, hey, I'm really good at what I do, and that's my arc.
This time, I like that he actually was sort of struggling a little bit.
He was getting isolated on the serve, which is like, you don't do that. but they had his weakness. So that's what. There's so many wrinkles to the match, and I really was interested. Like, what does this look like if they lose? And like, do we start following like Nekama for the rest? Like, or does it just kind of cut here and now the senior? I don't know, but it had me thinking, and I love that tension when I'm watching it.
I think just about everybody has some fun moments. If they haven't, they're like really side characters. So number 7's name is Kinoshita. I still won't remember that, but I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah.
6 and 8, which is Inoshida and Narita, have had moments in the past. They did almost nothing this season, but that's fine. They're like side characters. I was actually pleased to see that Asahi had a strong game because it almost felt like he was an afterthought in the Shiratorizawa match. And maybe that's just because he was, you know, sort of dwarfed by Ushiwaka because he's like the ace, whereas like Asahi is an ace, but more in name only and not in disposition. But he really shows up good in that match against Inarizaki. Daichi is rock solid, even though I don't know that he has any really like major growth moments or anything that stands out. But as usual, he's the captain. He's the core.
How do you grow him? He's so wise. He's so great.
He's an all-around player. He doesn't have like one thing he's working on, one thing he specializes in. I was a little bit disappointed in the lack of Suga. He doesn't really have a lot to do in that match. And I'm not going to linger on the negatives because we're on the positive
Just
side.
in that one, he has that one moment.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's where he, because I remember saying he's so unflappable. And I said it about 6 different times, but I think it was just one scene still. He comes in, he does what he needs to do, and then he's out. But yeah.
But for our core folks, I mean, like you said, everybody has multiple moments. Obviously, Hinata the standout. And again, since I harped on the negatives part of that arc, it pays off in a big way. So at least the investment in the early part of the season is worth it because now we see him and his evolution to becoming a complete player beginning.
I love how they did that too because he starts being able to read it, but like body can't quite keep up yet, so he keeps getting hit in the face. But it's clear he's like thinking and he's getting the read on it. And then eventually it culminates.
And it works as a callback because he gets hit in the face all the time. It probably happens 5 or 6 times in the first 3 seasons. But now instead of it being from a lack of reaction, it's from too much reaction because he's actually seeing the game on a different level. And look, I mean, if you wanted to become a full-time player a la Daichi or Asahi or Tanaka, that's what it's going to take. You can't be a defensive liability and you have to not get pinch served for. So he hasn't got the serve down yet, but Lord knows he could probably jump serve if he ever wants to try and figure it out. But he's working on the defensive thing. And you know what? Looking at it from like a step back sports perspective, they need him to do that because when they're serving, their receive sucks because Noya's not on the floor. You don't play your libero in that rotation. He comes back in when you're receiving. So when they get caught in those situations, they have a hard time pushing points because with no Noya, it's Daichi and nobody else who can defend. Like I guess Suki at the net, but they have no other back row players worth anything. So it's an unnecessary thing for Karasuno as a whole.
I'm sentimental. I still hope that one of the plot lines of the show is Hinata's journey to the next like little giant, or what do they call him? Tiny giant. Giant. I'm still rooting for that, and like he needs to work on stuff like this to get there. I'm hoping next is the serve. I hope he starts developing a halfway decent serve because his hitting is pretty solid and he's getting better. Now he can receive. Or at least is on the way. He's no Daichi yet, but like he's getting better.
The tricky part about this and why I think it's kind of weird the way the pacing of the season went is when's that going to happen? Because they're in the tournament now. So like after beating Shiratorizawa, they had this time like a month before the next level was going to happen, the next tournament. So they had a little bit of time to work on a few things and add something to their game. Next season, in theory, should be just picking up right here in the tournament. I don't know where they'll be able to fit anything in. So I'm with you. I hope he does work on that, but it's like, when? He hasn't even really still mastered this thing. He's got a little bit of a hold of it by the end, but it's not like he's a complete player still. So, like, I don't know if that's going to happen. Like, when? Is there a tournament after this that we haven't been told about? I don't think so, because this is for all of Japan. So unless they're going to stick him on the national teams... But then he has to be a much better player before he's going to qualify for that. So I don't know what they're going to do with it. He still definitely can because his growth is exponential. But
what I like about the show, and I'm sorry if you were spoiled on this. I hope I never am because it's one of the parts I have fun on. Is like, is season 2 going to be Tanaka's now the senior? The trio of seniors is gone. Now we follow the character. Maybe there's a fun new freshman. Or is it going to be more like, we jump ahead in the future. Now we're talking about the national team and all the players that are on that. That could be another way they go about it. So there's a lot of possibilities, but I'm pretty invested in right now. I will note, to your point of like next season is just going to be more the tournament. This is by far the slowest we've ever moved, though, as far as like time through a season, right?
Yeah.
Season 2 was the entirety of that tournament. What they played 3 teams in that tournament in season 2? Daytech. That one weird
yellow team with the guy that seemed rapey, but then was nice in the end, I guess.
Yeah, and then Alba Josai.
So that's 3 teams, and then so all that was left was the finals, right? And then the finals took the whole season, which was really, I guess you could argue that's the least amount of time, but it's so cool. You have to do that for the final match.
Yeah.
Now we're like 2 rounds in, and how we've when we were talking about it, there's how many teams? It was a 64 team.
Right.
Pool,
so
right?
I don't know if it was 64 because there were buys, but now we're going to be in the quarterfinals, I think, with 16 teams left.
So 16. So they have 3 more rounds now.
Yeah.
Until the finals.
Nekama, and then so it's either 8 or 16 left. I thought it was 16. We never got a great look at the bracket, but it's going to be Nekama and 1 or 2 more teams. Yeah.
Okay. So
if they win, which I don't. You have to ask me if they're going to beat Nekama. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be. Nekama would be the point where now they've made it pretty far in the tournament. They knocked off the favorites we keep hearing. which seems pretty cool. And then they play Nekoma. Man, they have them losing to Nekoma again, though. I would be like, geez, that's rough. But narratively, that could still be satisfying. Except we spent so much time foreshadowing these other characters that if they're not going to show up till like season 5 at the earliest, that's weird. But then is the next big arc of the show the next attempt at this tournament?
Mm-hmm.
Where they finished in the top 16, not bad, but I don't know. When they beat Shiro Torizawa, they were like, wow, this team is really good. Now it's like they're a little exposed. I almost would have a hard time believing they're going to go all the way to the finals in some ways. Although they just played the favorites. So them looking a little exposed, that they're a challenging team. So I don't know.
Only thing I'll point out is those were the second favorites.
I know they were the runners up, and then I kept hearing that they were the favorites
they were
going
like
into this
one
year.
of the favorites, and maybe they mentioned that as like this year, but like the team, there was a team. This is again the OVAs. There was a team that beat Fukurodani in the OVAs. So it was weird. Fukurodani and Nekoma come from like the biggest part of Japan, so 2 teams from that tournament qualify instead of 1, and then because they're hosting, they got a third team. Neither Nekoma nor Fukurodani won that tournament. Both of them took L's and eventually advanced by winning on the loser's side. So the team that won from that bracket is on the other side somewhere, maybe for the championship, if either Nekoma or Karasuno makes it that far. We don't know a lot about them. So we'll see if that comes back. That's another team kind of floating out there, but we don't really know a ton about that team overall. So, I mean, who knows? But again, we didn't know a lot about Shiro Torizawa other than their reputation and then them running into Ushiwaka in the first episode of season 2.
Yeah.
Which keeps happening. They keep running into people.
Exactly.
Kenma, Ushiwaka. Just run until you get lost, and then you run into a major character. It's great. All right, so it's time to score.
I always go first. Miguel, why don't you go first for once?
Oh, God. Wait, what are we doing it out of? 5 or
10?
Oh,
it's always
10.
out of 10.
Oh,
Out of 5?
I couldn't remember. It's been a while
7
since
out of 5.
I've done one of these. So I enjoyed this season. I think it'll be interesting to see how it, sort of pays off with later seasons, kind of what we talked about in terms of the pacing. I think it'll feel better with other seasons to sort of match it up against. Right now, though, I think I would give season 4 an 8. I think is good. I liked it, but I thought the first 3 seasons were so good as like an arc, and this one's just beginning, so I don't really see how it's gonna like pan out yet. So it might get better, but I'm gonna give it an 8. The art style was a little jarring at times. Sometimes it was a little not as crisp or clean as it could be. I also really missed the commercial breaks with them actually doing volleyball. Having like birds and random shit flying around was strange.
Felt like another cut corner.
Yeah. But it was good. I am excited for nationals to continue and where we go from here. There were some good moments, but
I'm going to give it an 8, which is weird because I spent way more time talking about the cons, but it is a testament to when it's doing what it does well, it's really, really, really well. And it's really good. And it's rare that I feel this sort of tension when watching like a competitive TV show, where it's almost like I'm watching, in some ways, obviously when the ball hits and smoke comes off, like that's not real. But in some ways, it scratches the itch that I have for like sports too. So it's really satisfying on a sports end. It's really satisfying on a narrative end. I love the characters that I love a lot. And a lot of those dynamics are still paying off quite a bit. So, and, you get emotional when he has that, when characters come through and Tanaka has that fucking most clutch moment. You can't argue this of the whole season. He hits that shot down the line. It hits like on the line and it keeps them alive. If that's out of bounds, they lose. That's it. And you're just like, this is so satisfying. So 8 is probably too high, but I'm going to stick with it because I think it outweighs the cons.
Just to tie up a loose end, the mask guy is from the team Atachiyama that beat Nekoma and Fukurodani and is the number 1 might be the number one contender.
Okay. All right.
So we still don't know a ton about what's going on with any of that. But to beat two teams of those two's caliber, we kind of have an idea that they might be legit. I also think, we know from the previous season that they beat the team that Karasuno just beat in the finals of the previous year's tournament. So they're quite good as well. We'll have to see if that's the ultimate end game of what's happening here. As far as the score, I'm going to go 7.5. I'm going to go slightly lower, if only because I really had big issues with the first 10 episodes. Some of it's great. I will say I think the humor this season was as good or maybe slightly better than in earlier seasons, and maybe that's just because of the familiarity with the characters and it building over time. So there were moments where I still enjoyed those earlier episodes, and it does have some payoffs, at least for those two main characters, but that's 40% of the season. So that's tough. Even though I'm a guy who likes the slow build, I mean, Season 2's training stuff, I like quite a bit, but it's the whole squad as Kageyama and Hinata and everybody is figuring out what's wrong with their games and not just those two. Because like you said, when we lose the team dynamic and their two dynamic in particular, I don't know if it holds. Again, like Hinata is such a force of personality that he kind of sucks everybody else in with like the other players from other teams we've seen in the past. Kageyama is dry. And he has a couple freaks around him, we don't know him that well yet. So that whole thing kind of falls flat for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
At its peak, as Sean mentioned, I mean, this still hits all the emotional highs where even, it feels like watching sports where a big moment happens and you're invested and you feel like that tingles where you're like, oh shit, like that's awesome. And it does that really well. At its highs, this season is as good as anything before it, I think. But the middle of the curve is a little bit lower than it was before, so it gets a 7.5, which is a good score.
The ceiling's high, but the floor's a little lower.
Yeah, I think it's applicable to the overall pacing, the story, and the animation. So with all three, it's like I can't go any higher than that.
Yeah,
I was worth the wait. I'm super excited for more. I still love the show, so it wasn't like it diminished it in my eyes. But I think it's the worst season of the four.
I'd have to think on it. I think you're probably right, though.
I think that's just because the first three are held to such a high standard in my book that I don't even really have to think about it myself. But having sprung it on you, I've put some thought into it. I don't expect you to have an answer right now. But for me, it's this one, and it's not close.
And I think the high for me is the Alba Josai second match.
I think Season 2 is.
Although the first match, as I go back, I was really devastated when they lost the first one.
It was
like
so
legitimately,
sad.
It was like if the Suns lost.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that. But going back now, I'm like, that's one of my favorite things. I'm so glad they did that.
Yeah.
In the moment, I did not think that, but
oh yeah, same. It was devastating.
They needed to, because it's almost like when you have a character death. It's like you have to kill some characters sometimes because you have to have that tension there.
Mm-hmm.
And having them lose, it's like, okay, this is a thing that this author will do. So now you got to be on edge. There's no beforehand conclusions.
Because they lose a lot in practice. And
yes,
that's part of their growth, but them losing that key match opened the door to now. It's a tournament, so like all the losses they took before, I mean, they're going to win now. Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's hard to do, and I think they have an unenviable task going forward because Season 1 leads directly into Season 2. You can replay a lot of those same teams, and it has added stakes. We already know some of the players. They can bring in like Mad Dog and add a new dynamic, but for the most part, we know the people. Then Season 3 is kind of weird because it's just the Shiro Toizawa match, and Haikyuu's at its best when it is in these clutch matches, but you need the build from the other two seasons to make that matter. And then Season 4 is like, well, now we have to kind of slow things down a bit, which is understandable, but they can't play the same teams anymore. They're all eliminated. Karasuno beat them all to get to this point, so they have this tough task of introducing characters that we care about. They did it with the twins. The others may have some potential. The other ones from this season I don't think panned out, but I'm still excited to see what comes next.
Yeah.
You brought up a good point, Kayla. Like, it feels like it's starting a new story arc in a way, which is weird because them winning that tournament only was to qualify for this now bigger one.
Right, yeah.
But narratively speaking, it does seem like we're kind of starting a new thing, a new phase.
Yeah, for sure. You also made a good point, Chris, about like the rivals. I liked the Mia twins fine, but I did not feel invested in that rival team nearly as much as like Alba Josai or Shiro Torizawa. I thought those rivals were so good. Maybe because we had more time with them in previous seasons, or even just like the reputation of Shiro Torizawa preceding themselves, that history really helped. So then meeting this new team is like, okay, I guess I gotta care about all these new people now.
And there's a little bit on the twins where they prove themselves, right? They're good.
Mm-hmm.
But so much of that beginning is like them just telling you like these twins are awesome. Just like take our word for it.
Yeah.
Whereas like you said, either because we've seen Aoba Josai firsthand or the reputation precedes Shiro Torizawa, it was a little bit of a different thing. And the payoff was a little bit less.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
And maybe it couldn't have been as high, so season 4 was just in an unenviable position. But don't know. But either way, I mean, like, for people who are regular viewers of this podcast, you know we like this show quite a bit. And as usual, we talk more about the negatives than the positives because we don't want to just sit here gushing over something. But it's still very much worth the time. If for some reason you haven't watched this season but have watched the show, like, keep going. It's worth it. It just has a couple of pratfalls along the way.
Yeah.
The other season 4 we're going to review today is Cobra Kai, which came out, I think, on New Year's Eve. At least the start of it did, and then, eventually came out more on Netflix, and we watched it, I don't know, February, or at least we finished it around there. So it's been a little bit of time.
It was a lifetime ago.
But still, we can review it. We were going to kind of get around to it eventually once we had all watched it. It's a show that overlaps again, and it's a show that we were quite eager to watch. It's a different season than the one that preceded it. Ones that preceded it, but I'm still not sure where it falls for me. There's a lot of things I like about it, but when I rank these, it's going to be interesting.
It's tough. Yeah, it's really tough.
I have no idea how to
We'll start with the
these.
negatives again. I thought this season, as much as I loved the idea of them teaming up, Daniel and Johnny, it was so frustrating for so much. And it was like, this show does this sometimes from like miscommunication or whatever. There are frustrating moments where you're like, for the sake of conflict, I get it, but like, God, it's annoying. I felt that a lot with this season between the two of them. Like, you just cannot figure it out to the point where I'm like, especially Daniel, are you ever going to go through like a character arc? Like, are you ever going to grow in the show?
He was such a stick in the mud this
I'm sure
season.
you are at some point, but now it's been 4 seasons and you don't have a lot to show for it. You have a little bit. And I can see where your arc is headed now. And I think it's going in a good place. But I was just like disappointed. I was like, man, how much time are you going to spend with you making the same mistakes, refusing to change?
Yeah, it was frustrating. The season was weird in some ways because like we have this, teased team up from season 3. And, you go into season 4 hoping like, maybe it won't work out 100% of the time. But you would hope that it works at least a little bit because it's been built up. It doesn't work at all, but now we're kind of maybe gonna go back to it at some point of like, yeah, maybe we will team up. And it's like, what was the whole point of the season then? Like, I don't know. It just felt like it was sort of wasted potential, I guess.
So I think I want to take a different tack for this, just to make it kind of separated from the other review.
Sure.
I was kind of considering looking at the principal cast and deciding if they had like a glow up or like a step back this season.
Okay. All right.
I like it.
Let's start with Daniel because, I mean, he's not really the main character of this. So that's clearly Johnny. But this is another show that has this cast that kind of has like 8 to 10 principal characters now. So let's just go one by one, talk about them, and then we can kind of look at the season as a whole. In Daniel's case, I kind of agree. His stubbornness, his quickness to anger has always been a part of the character, so I didn't mind him being slow to change because that's sort of inherent to who he is. But he almost takes a step back here for me this season because it's too much in that direction. Like, he's had now like 5 different moments over the course of the show where he's had to be like, Mr. Miyagi told me something about this once. Maybe I should think about the wisdom he imparted upon me instead of being stubborn all the time. Eventually that's going to have diminishing returns because it's like, all right, dude, how many times do you have to be taught this lesson?
I think where they're going now is the big, and it's almost like they knew where they wanted to go with it before anything, so they had to get there. The fact that, and this is spoilers, that they lose despite doing everything right, I think is going to have eventually a profound impact. I think it might get a little bit worse before it gets better, but I think eventually that's why they did that. But again, we've been here before with Daniel. He's supposed to be somewhat wise and zen, and yet it seems like he's the least zen character out of the whole show at times. And it's really frustrating.
So like I said, if it was just about growth, I could see it. And I liked some of the things they did with him in the earlier seasons because of it. Because, again, back in the Karate Kid movies, he was struggling with this all the time. At a certain point, though, you're like, that is him, but that was him when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And now he's a grown-ass man. And while the whole show is kind of predicated on these adults are crazy and karate is too important in their circle, he in particular feels like he's sort of stuck in the mud. And maybe that's just because it's in contrast to Johnny, who we'll do next. But it's like Johnny, while he's also got a lot of his like failings, is clearly growing over the course of the show. It doesn't feel like Daniel has the same path.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do Johnny.
Sure.
Other than a couple of frustrating things where they just can't get along and they seem very unwilling to even try all that hard, really.
Right, yeah. Like, come on, guys.
Johnny definitely grew. And in the ways that he didn't grow, he's so punished for at the end. But he sees it. So, you know, I know sometimes Chris gets this way for sure, where he's like, the ending of something can ruin the whole thing for me. And I almost could have felt that this way, but in the end, when Miguel leaves and Johnny immediately knows, he's like, this is my fault. He's not like, I can't believe, he's no longer stuck on that thing of like, I can't believe Miguel did this to us. He's like, I fucked up. I thought that was great. And that really punctuates the arc he had this season. And I thought it was really good.
He takes that ownership and he doesn't even know why he fucked up.
Yeah.
Because in one of the biggest miscommunications this show has had, in a show that is littered with them, he's drunk and half asleep when that moment happens with Miguel that sets him on this course to begin with. So Johnny's taking the fall for things he doesn't even fully understand. So if, to your point, like that even shows how much he's come so far in such a short period of time. Yeah.
And I feel like he learns more from the joint training. I might be making this up now because I'm a Johnny fan, but like, I feel like Daniel's like, yeah, it's like fine, whatever. And Johnny's like, okay, I can kind of see. And then he uses it actually. And his training helps Sam in her match a lot.
Who we'll get to.
Yeah. Okay, we'll stop there.
Interesting
for now.
that we're going to even talk about her because we probably wouldn't have in a previous season, but we'll get there.
So overall, I thought it was a strong season for him.
Yeah, I enjoyed Johnny. I mean, there's the usual pratfalls if he can be stubborn and frustrating, but it's been great to see his growth, and we can see it in every single season. And
I didn't like the awkward dad thing. I will just say that. I found it annoying, and I'm glad they didn't really do it that much. It ended up being good because Miguel kind of wanted him to be that father figure, and then Johnny was like, Robbie or whatever. So that was fine, but like hey, awkward dad time. I was like, I don't need this. This is stupid. But that was small. Otherwise, I loved it.
Yeah.
And this will, I mean, it's hard to segue without talking about other characters, but him having a moment with Robbie at the end of the season, I think, is also well earned.
So
which starts to get
good.
to some of my favorite stuff. But we'll
like now what's going to be interesting is he going to be a father figure to Miguel? Is he going to be an actual father to Robbie in some respects? I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, but they can do both or one or the other or neither, I suppose. But I like a lot of the directions at the end of the season. Like you said, I was maybe on the fence about how the tournament went, but then what they're setting up for season 5, I liked quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go to good guys first. So we'll get back to like Robbie and Tori. Let's go we danced around. Let's go Miguel next. We'll get to Sam after that.
I don't know if you say subjectively good guys, Chris. Sorry, Kayla. That was from the episode with Dave. Sorry, did you say who are we doing now?
Miguel.
Oh, best part of the show. I maintain to this day, Johnny and Miguel are the heart of the whole show.
Yeah.
And no matter who the rest of the ensemble is, it's these two show. This is why this show succeeds. It's why I care. Good. I mean, I'm trying to remember. I will say it was not like, when I think about the top moments of the show, Miguel doesn't jump out to me as having some of the strongest stuff. I think it was solid. The stuff with Daniel was interesting. And again, it just goes to show the ultimate lesson that all the viewers know already and that you hope the characters are going to learn. It takes a mix and it takes different philosophies and a balance. And I think Miguel really understood that and illustrated that. I thought he had a good season. And then, shocking, the favorite, I would say, to win the tournament. And then he breaks his back. And it was like, I don't want to do this. And so he just left. He probably would have been fine to go out. Maybe could have won the whole thing. But he's like, my heart's not in it. I'm not going to risk my body for this. And I'm done. It was cool. It was gutsy. That was a gutsy play from for the writers of that show.
Who knows what next season holds for him.
Fighting the cartel, man. I'm
telling you. We're going to have like a justified start to this where he's in Mexico off by himself, or maybe Johnny goes after him. We don't really know, but there's a lot of interesting ways it could go, since apparently his dad is the leader of a cartel or something. So, and probably knows karate if the show has taught us anything.
Everyone knows karate.
That's
It's
right.
It's a fundamental.
Except like Mrs. LaRusso. There's a
gonna
few
learn
other
it.
characters, but like she's the one like main character who never hasn't like she uses her words and that's about it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm not going to list her as a main character, but great season for her.
Great.
by the
Best
way.
season. I liked her a lot. And she
Yeah.
wasn't just like a wet blanket. She's been good. The whole show, she's been good, but
Yes.
definitely more agency now.
Yeah.
Big glow up for her.
Oh, big time.
Let's go back to Sam then, since we're talking about LaRusso anyways. Sam also a big glow up this season for two reasons. One, her character has a lot better development overall, even though it's a little sketchy at first, but she kind of has to overcome this hate inside of her, or at least know how to use it, because Daniel won't teach her anything about what to do with hate.
Yeah.
And also because like her action scenes are night and day with what she was looking like in season 3.
And, going into it, she said she did a lot more training, and I'm like, we'll see. And then I was like, okay, you
Yeah,
did. Especially
yeah.
when she did that, like, almost more freestyle fighting at the end.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this looks really good.
Yeah.
And, look, maybe it's not fair. I'd much rather see a character who it's just, like, has no fear and is kind of, like, reckless than a character who's like, oh, my God, everything. I'm afraid of everything. I'm paralyzed by fear. I can't move. That's not fair of me, but it's more entertaining to watch what she was this season.
Yeah. I liked her. I appreciated her growth a lot. And seeing her kind of overcome her issues. Because on one hand, yeah, it's frustrating, but I also get it to a degree. You were almost killed like a few times.
Yeah.
Tori went after you a bit, so I get it. But it was also nice seeing her overcome that. And yeah, her action was a lot better.
Yep.
Because it was one of the biggest red flags for me of season 3. It was like between the soccer scene, which we talked about when we reviewed that season and made fun of, and just some of the action in general. It's like you're like the 6th or 7th most important character in this show, and you look like you don't belong. Doesn't look like she doesn't belong anymore.
Borderline the worst at the action, despite being one of the most important characters. Yeah.
Yep. Now it's a legitimate question of like maybe she's one of the best fighters on the show now.
One of the best for sure.
Probably not the best. We have some picks for that. One of those might be, we might as well do one last good guy, Hawk, who I think is one of the more interesting characters of the season. He's a little mopey for like the middle third of it, and he has reasons to be, certainly. And I think it's nice that they're going to eventually move on past his hair being part of his identity, but he had to kind of overcome that. But certainly wouldn't have picked him to win the tournament.
That was so great.
That was awesome.
So my only complaint with Hawk was I didn't think he was in the season enough.
Yeah,
That would have been the only thing I would have said. So a testament to his character. I loved the arc he went on. I love that he still had an edge, even though he's like a good guy. Like sometimes a bad guy turns good, and then they're like, oh, you kind of lost everything that made you interesting, though. He still has that edge. He's still there, but now he's a lot more in balance. And yeah, him winning that tournament on a great fight with Robbie, just so good. Yeah, I loved that.
I really like what they've done with Hawk, because now you have these callbacks to the whole Eli thing from season 1 when he's getting back to more of his core personality, but he still has that edge and that confidence. I could see him being a big player in season 5. I hope he is.
Yeah,
because
so do I.
there's going to be an arc for him of all sorts of possibilities. He is the reigning champion now. He's going to be a force for good against this evil conglomerate of whatever is going to go on with Terry Silver, who we'll get to soon. I hope he has an even bigger role in season 5 because his actor's killing it.
Yeah.
He's so good.
So we were talking about the best action scenes. It's him or Miguel for me. And it's probably him.
Probably.
He's so good at all the different stuff. And he's adaptable. What I realized this season is when he was a psychopath in like season 2 and he's just doing flying elbow swings, it looks great. Now he's a little more controlled and he still pulls it off. And they do slow motion in these fights, and that can sometimes expose a choreographer doing the choreography. Not here. They both. Now Robbie is also very good. I left him out, so he's also excellent.
Like right up there. Those
Yeah.
3 are the three. But it's nice to see that so many others have risen to that level.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They're like Dimitri, who I don't want to talk a ton about, but like
Serviceable.
quite a good season for him.
Yeah.
And he looks like, he belongs in these scenes. He also look like he's not supposed to look like the best fighter, so maybe he's got another level he could go to because like this character is not meant to be up on that high plateau.
Yeah.
But
Last thing I'll say about Eli is just like I have a soft spot for that character arc of like the asshole that turns good. Jamie Lannister, best character in Game of Thrones, the books specifically. But yeah, I love that. So I'm. You could theoretically write him to a lesser role now. Like he's won the tournament, he's overcome his conflict. You could kind of have a minimal role. I hope they don't go that direction though, because I love him.
same.
Mhm.
Let's flip to the bad guys if
Okay.
there is an objectively bad.
Yep.
And I guess take your pick. We could talk about Terry Silver first, or we could talk about John Kreese first. Both are interesting in their own rights, and they're certainly, the main two antagonists, but they leave this season in very different positions.
I almost can't even. I don't know if I can even separate
We
them.
can talk about both.
It was
and
so interesting
say
what they did.
They're gloves for both, I think. So I think
They
we can get
were.
that out of the way. But yeah, they're sort of a tandem for the season. So
Because
why
you got
not?
a little bit of humanity from Kreese. I would argue you could have made a case that he does care about Johnny previously. You got the most humanity out of him this season that he's ever shown, maybe ever, including the movies, including everything.
Yeah.
And then the person you thought had a little bit of humanity and had changed is really just a crazy person. Full on, more than anyone in the show, psychopath.
I hope that the end of this season inspires you to go watch that movie.
I've already wanted to go watch it. So
Yeah, so now
we tried and we didn't have time.
that's
but-
true. So now you have even more incentive because this is paying off seeds that are planted in that movie,
Yeah.
which is why I called that thing about him bribing the judge when we were watching the episode. Just from having seen that, I was like, "Oh shit!" Like I know I can see where they're going with this. And sure enough, and that's great because it means if you have really gotten into the lore, you may see more coming than other people. Him being rich and bribing a judge isn't like this out of nowhere moment. It's almost better because you still don't really see it coming, but it fits perfectly because that's exactly the type of manipulative asshole that Silver is.
But what I love about it is I haven't seen the movie, so maybe you're like, no, I knew all of it. I don't necessarily know if he goes there, except he felt like emasculated and sort of embarrassed by Kreese, and like he feels like he has to get revenge at some point. Like I could see a case where if they have a nice partnership, he doesn't start being a crazy person. But there was that, and Kreese was pulling all these weird power plays. Don't talk back to me. It's my gym. And eventually, Silver just broke. Maybe all this years of pressing this part of him exploded. But he went full on villain, and it was really well done.
Mhm.
I did not really see it coming.
Yeah, they did a good job of kind of subverting him. So I haven't seen the movie either, but I know he's a psycho based on what I know about him in the movie.
Mhm.
So in the beginning of season 4, when they're like, oh, he actually seems like a normal person, and then later on, just kidding, he's actually crazy.
And I feel like so often when we judge performances, it's relative. So when your expectations are kind of not high, you can get really blown away.
Mhm.
That's why everybody on the show, I'm like, I think the performances are really solid, especially from these two, Kreese and Silver.
Mhm.
They have no business turning in performances that are as good as they are, really.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
In a show that is based on such a stupid premise at its core, which is karate taking over the valley, the fact that they're able to weave in this subtlety is one of the most impressive things about Cobra Kai in my book, because you still buy in, even though you're like they can make enough fourth wall jokes that it is still kind of silly. The characters are even this is probably a little much. Why don't we call the cops? But because everybody else in the world buys in, you kind of do too.
Yeah,
It works.
exactly.
Yeah.
And time out, subverting expectations. I think that's just what the show does really well. Eli winning, characters breaking alliances, turning good or turning to heel, betraying each other, sending their mentor to prison.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I tried calling what the season would be, and I would have failed. Splitting into 3 dojos, all doing this big tournament with different styles, and then what the ending was, I would have failed miserably.
Mm-hmm. Which I like, because this is the thing that we talk about a lot on this show, but it's you can subvert expectations. You just have to do it well.
Yeah,
because then
exactly.
if people are surprised pleasantly by what you've done, then they're not going to care what their expectations were.
Yeah.
So I'm
It's
looking at you, Star
compelling.
Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You can turn things on their head, but you can't do it really poorly. Otherwise, everyone's going to be mad that what they thought was going to happen didn't happen and resent what you did.
Yeah.
There's a couple more characters we can touch on real quick.
Well, I definitely want to talk about Robbie.
We got to bring up Robbie, and we'll do Tori here as well, and we'll
So,
kind of leave it at that.
Robbie had the best season. I would almost even argue that he's had. Period. Because I loved the idea of, and it goes hand in hand with the new character, and I'm so sad I cannot pull
I
his
don't
name
remember
right
his
now.
name either.
Kenny?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
right. Good pull.
Kenny is I actually love that story arc The whole thing. All the stuff with Kenny is great. But what I really love about it is what it revealed about Robbie and seeing yourself in the mirror and the mentor role that he tries to take and then fails because Cobra Kai, in this style, it's too much and it's corruptive.
Mm-hmm.
And so just seeing that and his breakdown at the end was like, this was maybe the strongest payoff that this show has ever had. It's up there in the discussion. And I thought that was so cool.
What I like is it's almost this lineage of failed mentorship.
Yeah.
Because now Robbie's like the third generation failure because he was taught by someone who was flawed, who was taught by someone who was flawed, and now he can't put it together. He's never done it before. He tries. He has the best intentions, and somehow this really sweet young kid gets completely fucking corrupted in the span of 10 episodes. And it doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel unbelievable.
Yeah.
It
And
was so well done.
how nice that everybody involved is still kind of sympathetic because there is this lineage of destruction that leads to it. You can look at everybody's motivations and go, yeah, like he tried, but he's not ready for this. And this kid was in a bad spot and it took the worst of all of this out of it. Like that's what the show does so well is the connective tissue between the original movies and this, but also just its own seasons works so well.
And I love with Robbie where even when he was bad, like before the redemptive stuff, because of the relationship with Kenny and because of just his character, you kind of root for him. Like you're not like, wow, you're a villain. You're outright bad. He still has elements of like you're compassionate for him.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought he had such an interesting story. It was cool.
So I think glow up for him, although
Big
he was one of the strongest characters before,
Yeah.
but maybe his best season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think glow up for Tori, who I don't want to say she was one-dimensional, but she was pretty much just a straight-up villain.
She was.
Yeah.
Like you could definitely see there were moments, like brief moments of like this underpining for her of like, okay, like she can see where she has kindness, but she's not showing it, and she clearly doesn't care about it.
And she pulled like essentially a knife. It was what was the claws.
She kind of tried to
She
kill
tried to kill
someone
someone.
with like studded
Yeah.
bracelet.
Trying to kill a
that
high
was spikes.
schooler.
Mhm.
So that's not great.
Not
Right.
great.
Yeah, we had a couple people try and kill high schoolers, and that's not a great look for them. So
Yeah.
it's hard to redeem them. In her case, though, they did a lot of work this season with her, and maybe it's because it's tied to Mrs. LaRusso, who also had her strongest work yet, but I thought that was going to be bad when it was first introduced. I was like, oh boy, like her, this powder keg with Mrs. LaRusso, who has been hit or miss at times in this series. Good overall, but at times been kind of a wet blanket, like you said.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know about this. It worked.
Yeah. Big time.
Mm-hmm.
Man, did it work. Maybe the most surprising of the whole season to me. Other than maybe the outcome, like you said, like that's so far out of left field.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. But just as far as the development of characters, I was like, damn, like.
And I wonder from like if there's a writing rule about this, like if you introduce an element to your show that is so one-sided, like bad, like Terry Silver, if that allows you to start to humanize some of the other elements, because you have that extreme now. So the people I would have said, like Tori, definitely pretty, like you said, one-dimensional, kind of just a bad person there to be an antagonist and kind of edgy. Now she has some character depth because we have a real psychopath over in the next room and they're crazy.
Yeah, that's very true.
One glow down. I don't know what the opposite of a glow up is, so
Okay,
we're just
sure.
going to call it a glow down. Stingray.
I guess.
I don't.
I mean, was he?
I don't know that he was blown up before. He at least had some funny moments and stuff. He's always kind of felt out of place, which is by design. You know, you get the fuck around, find out vibe with him. And obviously, he's used as the setup to have the betrayal with Kreese at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what direction he's going to take in a future season. The way the writing staff has worked to this point, there's certainly a lot of possibilities, and they can make them all believable. But I don't really find myself being that invested when he's on the screen.
I've never cared about Stingray, and that I don't. They'd have to do a lot to make that
not at
change
all.
going forward. I don't care. His character's kind of obnoxious, and I just.
Yeah.
The trick to me is looking at the top. I know the podcast listeners can't do that, but we have like the poster for season 4 where you've got our two senseis lined up, even though it didn't work, and the two evil ones lined up, even though that didn't work either, really. When we look at the bad side, Tori, seemingly on a redemption path. Robbie, definitely on a redemption path. Kenny, hopefully going to get a redemption path. Certainly deserves one in season 5 or somewhere. And then there's that one douchebag from all the way back in season
Always
1.
a douchebag.
Always.
Who will not be redeemed and shouldn't.
Yeah, actually, he's the other example of like just one-dimensional. sort of villain asshole.
So as we
Yes.
look
I
ahead,
hate him.
yeah, and
I
that's
hate
good.
him too.
They need to have a few characters that
Yeah.
are not redeemed because not everybody can get one or it undermines it. And
Yeah.
somebody's got to be allied with Silver next season. Maybe that's Stingray now because of the connection. I don't know. And then him, who again, I don't remember his name. But if the other 3 characters on this poster are all going to turn at some point, Silver's got to have an army of Karate Kids at some point.
Yeah.
And it can't be lingering devotion to Kreese because he's gone. So it's going to have to be, maybe they'll introduce a few new characters. They teased a couple in the tournament that may have bigger roles next season that could be interesting. But that's going to be one of the things I'm most fascinated with is, okay, as we keep blurring the lines of good and evil here and more people are kind of shifting out of that, where do we have our antagonists from?
Mhm.
Yep.
Silver up top, phenomenal. He's going to be a force to be reckoned with next season. I can't wait to see how dark they turn him. But there has to be kids, too, because Silver can't just fight all these children.
I wonder if we've seen the last All Valley. Like, probably not. But depending on where they take the show and when the series ends, it could be. If they go to fight the cartel and everybody maybe teams up, like maybe they don't go back to the All Valley. Maybe this was the definitive. And if it was, I mean, they really, it was a good one.
I mean, look, for all of the issues that they've had with like the fighting in school and whatnot, the tournament went off without a hitch.
Yeah.
And they had Carrie Underwood. I don't know why the fuck they had Carrie Underwood, but
That
they
was
did.
great. That was almost a joke in and of itself, but it was awesome.
So
that
like
was really funny.
that, they're flying high. They're definitely going to come back with a force for the 52nd All Valley tournament. Is that the next season? It might be too soon. That might be a season 6 thing. I don't know what the end game is, but it's sort of similar to the Haikyuu situation. There's a lot of possibilities for next season, and I'm excited by almost all of them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we definitely got season 5 announced. Did they announce a 5 and 6?
I don't know. Look,
Okay.
like we know season 5 was confirmed even before 4 aired.
So Chris is looking. Mikhail, why don't you start to think about your score here?
I can flip
Okay.
the screen. Oh, yeah, there you go. And we can decide where it ranks.
The
I know
thing
my
is, I
answer
don't remember
now.
what I scored the other season.
Just it shouldn't matter actually.
If
really.
you're consistent with your heart, then you don't have to worry about that. That's
Yeah.
the best thing.
It's true.
Why don't I go? It sounds like you're thinking.
I'm thinking. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Cobra Kai creators already working on season 6.
Yeah,
they want to make at
that's
least
what I-
6 seasons.
That's
Okay.
what I thought I read. So
Mhm.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
If there's 2 more season, I could see us going back to the All Valley.
And I'm also getting a lot of those dumb search results where it's like Cobra Kai season 6 release date. We don't even know when season 5's coming out. Get
Yeah.
that article the
Yeah,
fuck out
of
of here.
course.
Yeah.
Well, those articles, you click on it and it says the release date is unknown. And you're like, wow,
And
clickbait.
after a whole paragraph
Yep.
list of nonsensical
To
details.
generate SEO. All right,
Yep.
so
Mhm.
We know the trick.
I will
Mhm.
say, I want to say an 8.5. I might be limited to 8. I'm going to put it in there for now, and I'm going to hear what you guys have to say, and then I'm going to switch it if I need to. So I'm going to say 8 for now. Because again, it's kind of like Haikyuu, where like the elements that work. No, I'm going to go 8.5. I'm going to go 8.5 because there's so many story elements that really do work. The
Mhm.
Kenny thing, the Silver introduction, which I thought was a little bit slow in the beginning, but definitely paid off. Sam and Tori, everybody. I mean, we went through the glow ups. Pretty much everybody
It
glowed
was
up.
like 9 out of 11 glow ups.
And like we don't even count. Stingray's barely a character. He might only been there for that plot device to be the catalyst for the betrayal.
Mhm.
We might not ever see him again. We probably will, but he's barely a character. There was so much good payoff, and for me, in an action show, in the what's that stupid movie that came out, The Irishman. I don't need good action in a Martin Scorsese movie where people are just at a table talking. For an action TV show, I need the action to be good to really enjoy it.
Mhm.
And I thought the action was phenomenal. I mean, really, almost all of it. Even the training was really interesting.
The
I
training
don't
was
buy
great.
people jumping from rooftops. I'm hoping Johnny didn't actually intend them to do that. I think he probably did, which is so wildly dangerous. But
There's a mattress at the bottom. I'm sure it's fine.
yeah, they would have been just fine. So much worked that I'm going to give it 8.5. It was a solid season. I would have to think where it ranks, but it was really good.
I'll go second. Michaela can go last.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Take that. I oscillated between 9 and 9.5.
Okay.
And because I thought about this as well in advance, it's not fair to you guys, but it doesn't matter. I set the show up. It's my favorite season. And I walked away from it thinking that was the case, but I'm glad in a way that we had time in between because it's nice to let those takes simmer for a bit.
Yeah.
I think it's my favorite season. Despite some of the pratfalls, to me, because the action was as good as it's been, and I don't even think it's that close. The tournament in season 1's pretty solid. The very last fight in season 3 where they just go ham in the house because of some of the takes and stuff they did there is neat. But consistently, the action is so good here. Some characters have some really meaningful developments that pay off previous seasons. I think I'm going to lean towards 9 and not 9.5 just because the middle episodes drag a little bit, especially when Johnny and Daniel were going at it again. But I think it's a 9 and it's my favorite season.
I still think season 1 is my favorite. I just love it so much. But it's that dynamic that I love at the forefront of the whole show because we haven't done a lot with the ensemble yet. Just Johnny and Miguel and their adventures together. So good.
Yep.
I think the only reason I have it higher than that, because I agree with the overall idea, is because all these other characters are so good now that I'm happy to have them, and it's not like I feel like they're pushing out that core dynamic.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't always the case in season 3, where it's like, okay, this is happening, but can we get back to Johnny and Miguel?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so season 4 I think is probably my second favorite season. But in a show where every season I've enjoyed thoroughly, I haven't given the show lower than an 8. There's no way. I guarantee it. I don't know what my scores are, but I guarantee it. And that's impressive.
And I might have given season 1 a 9.5. I'll have to go back and check. I think it was a 9 or a 9.5. But it was also different at the time because that was season 1 and it was all we had.
Yeah.
So I might go back and rank that a 9 now and give this a 9 and have it slightly ahead on a tiebreaker or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, all 4 seasons have been good. I'm excited for season 5 because they have not really missed a mark yet.
Yep.
Okay, I've vamped as long as I can.
All right.
We can buy you no more time, Caleb. This is it.
It's fine. I wish I remember my other scores because the show is
Follow
so
your
good.
heart.
Like, every season is so good. I'm gonna give this a 9. I'll go in the
They're going to say a 10.
no.
I don't know why. Probably
Come on, I don't give
history.
10s anymore.
She probably won't
I'm
give a
I'm
10 ever
super
again 'cause of
critical
these
now.
I don't know why. I was really
Teasing her.
conflicted. I had to go back. I'm going to give it a 10.
You said follow her heart.
No, actually, I really enjoyed this season a lot. I like all the new characters that we're getting. Like, the ensemble cast is getting bigger and bigger, but it hasn't gotten too big yet. And I still care about everybody. And, like, Kenny, that was devastating.
I love Kenny, and he's a new character. Could have gone so bad.
It could have
And
gone
he was
sideways.
such a great addition.
He's so good. So, yeah. And I just love what they're doing with the characters and the growth. And the action has been super good. I like that the show balances the training arcs with like the tournament. I mean, anytime there's a tournament, it's just awesome. And I like that they added like the showcase or whatever that was.
That was a great addition.
That was
Excellent
really
decision.
cool.
Yep.
Yeah. That was a great way to kind of spice it up and show off everybody's moves and talents. And yeah, that was really cool.
Mikhail, we forgot about the new, like the academic, like genius on Johnny's team. Like, she was a new addition too. She
Yeah, I
didn't
don't-
get as much screen
I was
time.
trying to think of her name. I don't know
Oh,
what it is.
that's right. Yeah,
But
I
she
don't
was
remember
cool
her either.
too.
Yeah, I'm excited for more of her too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like
to your
that we're
point,
getting
a lot of
this.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Devin Lee.
Devin.
Devin. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Just happened to see a picture of her.
Great season.
Another interesting one going forward.
Yep.
Yeah, I think 1 is probably my favorite. 4 is probably second best season, and then probably 3, and then 2. Probably.
But all
Something.
good. So
But
it's
all
like
good.
not a
all
slight.
good. It's not a
yeah.
slight at all. Like they're all like in the 9, 8, range. That's all very highly ranked. But
For a show that really has no business being this good,
Not at all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
when you think about it, and the time in between the Karate Kid movies and this, whatever you want to call it, sequel reimagining.
Between the premise itself and like it's a YouTube original. And you're like,
you're like,
I
I
yikes.
don't know.
Are you sure?
Now it's on Netflix, so it should be good, right?
Yeah.
They won't cancel a show for...
No,
I don't trust Netflix. I don't trust them with
it's all right.
anything.
They've
This
already
is-
said season 5 and
This
6.
is too big.
Yeah.
And if they did make the mistake of dropping it, somebody would pick it up. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the one nice thing. We don't have to be too worried about it, unlike some shows on Netflix where it's like, well, I want to get invested, but maybe this will have the rug pulled out from underneath it all of a sudden.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, so there you have it. 2 shows that you should watch. If for some reason you haven't done it before when we've recommended them strongly, now there's 2 more seasons in the books where we like both of them quite a bit.
I talked over your score, Kayla. I was making a what was it? I missed it.
9.
9.
There's the 9.
Nine.
I listened
Okay.
to Michaela.
So we
Thank
we
you.
averaged like an 8.8.
Yep,
It's pretty
Pretty
good.
good.
Yeah.
pretty high.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the whole show would be in that 8.5 range probably. And
I
Oh, yeah.
definitely agree.
Definitely.
Haikyuu
it's-
probably
Maybe
there too, maybe slightly higher because of the stellar earlier seasons. So like
Mhm.
when we recommend these things, we're not doing that half-assedly. So if you haven't checked them out, we've talked about them on like 8 different episodes now. So you
Yeah.
owe it to yourself to give them a look if you've been on the fence.
We might review Doctor Strange. We'll see if Chris gets out to see it. I don't think you are yet.
No.
But we'll see.
But, it's fine. We can finally review No Way Home if I watch
Someday.
that.
Oh, yeah, there you
Timely and relevant.
go. Yeah.
But, I mean, hey, this season of Cobra Kai came out 3 months ago. Or, well, hell, it was, like I said, New Year's Eve was the first episode. So that's been almost 5 months. So who cares, right? 4 months, whatever. That's the end of this episode. We'll be back live next week with the audience in tow and all that jazz. Should be a regular show once we're back in town, so we'll see you there. In between episodes, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com or youtube.com/objectionnetwork for new videos 5 to 7 days a week. We'll see you next time.